In this video, we're going to talk about depreciation. So depreciation occurs when the value of an asset decreases over time. And an example that I think we can all relate to is if you buy a car. So if you buy a brand new car, the joke is that as soon as you drive it off the lot, the value depreciates. So it decreases. And depreciation can occur in different ways. So you could have linear depreciation. So it depreciates by the same amount, like let's say dollar amount every year. Doesn't have to be years, but usually we talk about things in terms of years here. Or instead, you could have a declining balance depreciation where, like with growth, it's not a constant dollar amount. So it's decreasing instead by a change, but not a dollar amount as well. So you have kind of a sharper decrease in the beginning and then more of a leveling out. So they both have pros and cons to them. And what you'd want to do is you would want to have the knowledge to know which one is best for your company. So an accountant would typically know this, would know how to determine that. It is a balancing act because for straight line depreciation, your depreciation item, not as much in the beginning, but more at the end. Whereas with something called declining balance depreciation, the depreciation is faster in the beginning and then not as fast later. So that can really affect your potential outlooks on your profits for the company. So it is important to know which one you should use for the given circumstance. So again, if you don't know, then you would want to do research, let's say, or ask an accountant who would be more familiar with that. So let's look at both cases here. And I'm going to go to the startup worksheet. And we're going to, in cell B13, we're going to enter our assets at 300,000. And just a reminder that there's a lot of vocab in this unit. So if you're not familiar with these terms, you really want to go in and read about some of these vocab terms here. So our assets are things the company would own that they could potentially, use or sell and get money from. So let's say we have $300,000 in assets. So that could be equipment we own. It could be if you have a property or something else, etc. Now we're going to go to the depreciation sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and in cell B4, I'm going to go ahead and type in, go back to my startup worksheet here and use cell B13 there and just bring that 300,000 over. Again, ideally, we're trying to use as many formulas as possible. So if I change it in one spot later, I don't have to change it everywhere else. It will flow through the rest of my workbook. And again, just make things easier. So your salvage value is how much the item would be worth at the end of its lifetime. So think of it like maybe you're going to sell it for parts or scrap or something like that. So you've used the item as long as really viable for your company. What can you now sell it for at the end of its, usable life? So our assets are going to be worth about 75,000 once they have they've been used as their fullest. And then the life of our asset is going to be 10 years. So maybe whatever asset we have, a piece of equipment or something like that, we think is valuable for 10 years. It will continue to work for 10 years. And then after that, it becomes, unusable, or maybe the technology has changed too much. We need to replace it, etc. All right, so I'm going to do straight line depreciation first. So I'm going to start in cell B10, and the formula for straight line depreciation is SLN for straight line. And you're going to enter the cost. And I'm going to type it in because I'm going to fix my so I enter my cost, I enter my salvage value, so that's going to be B5. And the life of the asset, again, oftentimes it is in years. So here it's going to be 10 years, but it doesn't matter, whatever the period happens to be. So this is 10 periods, right? 10 years. And that's going to be BC6. So the thing with straight line depreciation is as I copy it over to years 2, 4, and 5, I want the number to stay the same. So it's using the same amount of value every single year. So we're losing $22,500 every single year on that asset. Again, I only have the first 5 years here, so that's why, we don't have all 10 years, we're just doing the first 5, but you do have that here. For my cumulative depreciation for year 1, it's just going to be cell B10. There's really nothing there. And then for year 2, it's going to be the depreciation from the previous year plus whatever is from year 2. And the same thing for year 3. It's going to be the depreciation from the previous year plus from this year. And again, you can continue that formula all the way down. And then finally, we could also look at the value of the asset at the end of each year. So in cell B12, it equals, and I'm going to select B4, which is the starting value of my asset, and I'm going to subtract out the depreciation for that year. So I'm going to subtract out the cumulative depreciation. So at the end of 1 year, our asset is only worth $277,500, excuse me. And then I can go ahead and copy this formula over. I do want to be careful though. I don't want that B4 to change. So I'm going to go ahead and fix it. And then as I copy it over, I'll be subtracting the other cumulative values, but that B4 will stay the same. So in year 5, we're taking 300,000 and subtracting the 112,000 here to get our final answer. So this is what straight line depreciation looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and kind of just redo it and see what it looks like for a declining balance depreciation. And we're going to go do it down below here. So I'm going to go to cell B16. And the formula there is DB for declining balance. And again, we're going to enter the cost, which if you scroll up was in cell B4. The salvage value was in cell B5. The life was in cell B6. So it all kind of starts the same. And here's where it does change. The next thing we're going to enter B15, because I do want to have what my depreciation is at the end of 1 year, and then I'll do 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and so on. The last value here is if you want to add in months as well, it's optional. So let's say I want to know what happened at the end of 1 year and 2 months, right? I could do 1 year and then 2 months and add that in. But here we're just going to stick with full years. So we're decreasing about 38,700. And then I can go ahead and copy that over. And you can see that it changes, right? So it's a much sharper depreciation in the beginning, but then it levels off, right? It's going to be slower at the end. So now this is going to start getting slower here, where this one will stay at 22,500 in that case. So we have a constant percentage decrease. So again, it's very similar to growth, right? You have this kind of idea instead, where you have a constant percentage decrease rather than a fixed number. All right, so to finish this up, our cumulative depreciation for the first year is just going to be that 38,000. And then for the next year will be that 38,000 plus the 33,000. And then it'll continue on for the remaining years. So the year before plus the current year. Again, cumulative means to add them all up or bring them all together. And then finally for the asset value. So my asset value here let's see, it was way back up in cell B4. Let me just double check that. Yep, B4. And then I'm going to subtract my depreciation. I'm going to fix the B4 because I don't want that to change. And then just like with the other example, I'm going to go ahead and copy that across. So again, you can see, comparing the straight line and the declining balance, they both have their pros and their cons, right? In the beginning, you have less of a decrease here, whereas here you have a much sharper decline. But then as the years go on, they reverse. This one becomes less sharp, and this one remains the same and continues to go down the same amount. So it is important to know the product and which one would be more relevant. All right, we can also add this to our income statement. So let's go ahead and go to the income statement. And I'm looking for cell B24. Excuse me. So in cell B24, I'm going to go ahead and link with my other worksheet. I'm going to hit an equal sign. I'm going to go back to my depreciation worksheet and type in or click cell B16. And that will bring that value back into depreciation for year 1 here. And then I can go ahead and copy it over to the remaining cells. And hopefully they all correctly. So that last one was 22,273. If I double check on my depreciation sheet, it is 22,273. So they all copied incorrectly. And I can bring in that depreciation right there. Now, I hadn't entered in my initial earnings yet. You may have already done this if you've been following along in the text, but I skipped it in one of my videos. So my initial earnings is going to be my gross profit minus, oops, let's fix that. All right, there we go. So let's try that one more time. So my initial earnings are going to be equal sign, my gross profit of 600,000 minus my total general expenses, right? So whatever's coming in minus what's going out. So my initial earnings for year 1 are actually negative $5,000. And then I can go ahead and copy this formula over for the rest of the years. So I do have a negative first year, meaning I'm losing money, but it looks like by years 2, 3, 4, and 5, at least so far, based on just my initial kind of expenses, I am coming out as a profitable company here. All right, so now let's go ahead and finish the rest of this piece here. So for cell B25, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract B23 and B24. So I'm taking my initial earnings and subtracting out that depreciation. The depreciation acts as a cost. So far the first year, I'm down almost $44,000. But again, by year 5, I'm doing very well. I'm earning hopefully over $500,000 there. All right, so now we've added our depreciation to the income